Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 32 of the Rewatch podcast presented by the Terrible Video Gamers Club. I'm your host, Tyler Schatz, someone who is starting to question the geography of Westeros. Thanks, Nick. Joining me for the recording session are one Stephen Howard.
One who has lost all his navy? I had a better one in my head, and then I tried to pivot, and I apologize to everyone who's listening to this. I'm going to keep going until someone stops me.
Amanda Howard.
Stop. I'm Amanda Howard.
She is Amanda Howard.
I want Sir Davos to introduce me like that.
And Nick Castillo.
I trust the eyes of an honest man more than anything else.
And last but never ever least, Gary Delaney.
Debatable.
I feel like everyone underestimates the sexual tension with Elena Tyrell.
There's a reason Gary has to go last, and I always look forward to it every podcast.
Much like most of his other stuff, he tends to derail.
Just derail everything.
He also broke Steven.
Also, on that note, I don't think I'll get to cover this later. I just happened to look at that actress's Dana Rigg, her IMDb. She's actually a former Bond girl, but
She really?
a Bond girl in the James Bond movie that no one likes, that I think is the
Which one's that
best,
one?
which is Majesty's Secret Service.
Look
also
up a
have,
picture
like,
of her
a
when
deep-
she was that age. She was hot stuff. And
She
like
looks a
she's
lot like
still
Natalie
really
Dormer.
good looking.
Looks a lot like Natalie Dormer, who played.
Yeah, that's
Margaret.
right. I remember
It's, like,
seeing
it's
that.
really good casting.
Very good, like that, because you can buy it 100%. Their attitudes, their looks, it works.
Just
That
some
sass.
bad bitches. Sorry. Bleep.
Because you made me look her up, I am going to regale everyone with the idea that she actually started her career in acting in the theater, and her second thing that she played was King Lear. She played in King Lear with the Royal Shakespeare Company, which is huge. Sorry, continue. Good, getting off.
Isn't
topic.
Royal Shakespeare Company like a kind of a big deal in England?
It's a huge deal.
I'll accept that note because that is actually, you were like, oh, she was in plays, and I'm like, every actor is in plays when they're shitty in the beginning, and then you're like, oh, Royal Shakespeare Company, that might be notable.
I want the record to reflect that Gary asked if Shakespeare was big in England.
No, the Royal Shakespeare Company. Fuck. Sweet Shakespeare.
All right. So before we get completely too off topic here, we are here to discuss episode 3 from season 7, The Queen's Justice. Jon and Daenerys finally meet. Cersei gains a new ally. Sansa receives an unexpected visitor. Sam is confronted for his actions. I wanted to just kind of start this off with here, kind of as I mentioned in my introduction there, of like the geography of how everything and how everyone is moving around the world just seems baffling here lately. And again, we're getting into the part where the time between events in the episode is made to seem like it's a short distance, but it's probably really a long time to travel from one end to the other. But again, we're getting a shorter, condensed version of everything. So to throw it off here is, so as we discussed here in the last episode, the Dornish fleet and the Greyjoys was attacked somewhere outside of Dragonstone on their way back to Sunspear, or the city of Dorne, as the show called it there. And then Euron sails back to past Dragonstones, essentially, to King's Landing to present Ellaria Tyrell and the other Sand Snake to Cersei as the gift. And then he somehow sails all the way down and around Westeros there to be in the bay at Casterly Rock there at the end to destroy the fleet that had dropped off the Unsullied there. Does Euron Greyjoy secretly have fast travel unlocked in Westeros there, Stephen?
Look,
I'll
there
let Steven
can't-
talk about it. I just had a note on here. Get ready for everyone to talk about the travel speed, was what I wrote down as my note.
Yeah.
Go for
Well,
it.
you should. You should, because there is just psychotic fast travel going on here. And Varys could not be the only one who eventually unlocks fast travel. This is a general skill, guys. It's on the skill tree. You just have to build towards it, and you're on built towards it. My second comment was Amanda's made a note of it, like saying this every episode since she started on here. Remember when it took 4 episodes to go down the King's Road the first season? Like, it is just unfathomably different. Unfathomably at this point in time. And I use unfathomably because it is a nautical term.
Maybe he climbed like a really, really tall building and then
Mm.
like unlocked the fast travel since he climbed it.
He did the
I'm
eagle
not sure.
vision there to kind of get
Oh,
the lay of
there
the
you
go.
surroundings.
That's true. He climbed King's Landing. He got Eagle Vision there, and then he probably
There you
got
go.
Eagle Vision in Pike, which I believe is on the
Oh.
other side of the continent. So
Yeah, like I mean, he was a sailor. Maybe he just sailed around and climbed up like the one in each of the 7 kingdoms, and then unlocked fast travel for all of them.
But on a
or
real note,
conspiracy theory. Pike is his homeland, so he can fast travel back to Pike at any time.
oh, I like it. I like it. In a real sense, though, this puts the viewer at a huge conundrum because I think Nick and I were talking pretty heavily about tactics, strategy, and logistics specifically last time, and this makes none of that matter whatsoever because you can magic travel wherever you want. Your fleet can be wherever you want, destroying whoever else's fleet you want them to destroy. Your armies can just magically get up and disappear without anyone noticing they've disappeared. It makes any sort of strategy going forward impossible to comprehend besides them spoon feeding at you and saying, this is what happened, just accept it.
And
Tyler?
maybe like a little bit of I don't know where this kind of falls, but too the problem is like Casterly Rock in this episode is something we literally only see once in this entire show. So as the viewer, they don't even show it on. I don't think they even show it on like the introduction map of where Casterly Rock is in relation to everything else too. So I mean, you could kind of sort of maybe from the directorial side of it get away with that because we as the audience have no idea where Casterly, as the general audience, I should say, us idiots who spend too much time looking at maps and diving a little deeper into the world have an understanding that Casterly Rock is on the west side of Westeros, whereas the Dragonstone and King's Landing and Sunspear and all that stuff are more on the eastern side of Westeros.
East side.
Well, and I'd like to just point out real quick, it's not even just east side, west side. They are opposite sides of the same snaky continent. Opposite sides.
Okay.
It's not like one sort of west, one sort of east. They are opposite. Sorry, Gary.
Do you see I've already forgotten his name. Euron. Do you see him at Castle Rock, or is it possibly sent his armada there? You see his
Flagship's
ship
there.
with the
Yeah, I
with
think
the
it's made to
flag.
assume that he's there because his flagship is there.
I
Yeah,
will.
that would
I
be-
will. I will jump in really quick, just as a side note to Gary's comment. I did have that highlighted as well. Like I said, I'm not all in on the fast travelness quite yet, but yeah, that was also one of my questions. Is it his flagship? He's just not happening to be on it at the moment, and he split his forces.
See,
or
and
is he there?
as you guys were talking about it, like I could honestly believe that the Unsullied might not be great sailors. They're like they sailed across the continent, but I guess if any of Daenerys's crew were going to have sailing skills, it'd probably be the Unsullied or maybe the slaves, but not the Dothraki. But I don't know. Maybe they were just a real shite armada that they went over with a bunch of level 2 destroyers and then ran up against the other fleet that had some good ships. Anyway, Steven.
Honestly, Gary brings up it, and I am going to say Gary brings up a good point and back it up with historical evidence so he can't say boo history. And I'm going to say that
Ooh.
when it came down to, say, the Napoleonic Wars, the British Navy was inferior in terms of size to the French Navy, and they were able to get around everywhere faster than the French Navy because their sailors were better. So, I mean, that has a possibility that they could just be outmaneuvered that badly by a a people who live on the sea. That being said, and also to go to Nick's point, you're right. They don't ever actually say that's Greyjoy there. I mean, we don't know. We have to assume, and that is on the producers for not building up anything to that. We don't know if that's his flagship. He is
I
supposed
can
to
get
be a
behind that.
central character, and we don't know what his flagship looks like. We don't know who is sailing Daenerys' ships, and those ships have already played 2 major battles, and we have no idea about the quality of her sailors. We don't know who's even sailing her ships. So it's these are all possibilities, and the directors just don't want to grace us with that knowledge, and I don't know why, because they cut down on the episodes, so they have time. It's not like they have to squeeze all that crap in. Amanda?
I agree. Like it could easily they do not show Euron, so it could easily be someone else. But like I would have preferred than if they showed us a couple of his captains so that we would know. Like I can't assume that.
What are your guys' thoughts on the actor that plays Euron? Like, I was really impressed a little bit for a while, and then like I think he overacts a little bit in this episode. Just like he lost his charm of being a scoundrel and just became just like not even a likable character. Tyler?
I would say it's more of he lost his menace there, because now he kind of goes. He was kind of this cold, menacing kind of character there. That when we're first introduced to him, like this, I don't want to say stoic, but kind of this strong, quiet, kind of reserved guy there. And now, like I think we've made the joke, he's like Captain Jack Sparrow, except Game of Thronesified. Because
You're saying it's because he's not a wild card. He's not an unknown quantity anymore, that he's just less interesting. Sorry.
no, it's just kind of it's just the total tonal change between how he was introduced as this kind of like, and again I say stoic, but I don't really mean like the good version of a stoic there, but like just strong silent type there, basically man of few words, to now he just doesn't shut up there, and he's like he like I said, he turns into kind of this weird Jack Sparrow hybrid, and he's sitting there constantly like he's like poking at Jamie in the throne room, where it felt like the guy they had introduced before is not that person that we see in the throne room there. So it's a completely different feel for the character. Go ahead, Nick.
I think that he is different. I agree he's lost the danger in the menace, because we see more of who he is when he talks more. But I see him more as like a Joker kind of character, where he's dangerous because he's got all the ships and the knowledge and clearly the seafaring capability to be a fearsome pirate on the seas. But like the phrase from the Dark Knight where he says he's just a dog chasing cars, like he wouldn't know what to do if he caught one, is kind of how I see him. Or as a character who's got the fearsomeness in the sense that he is a wild card. Like, I mean, the balls to look Jamie in the eye and talk about his sister that way, like with his sister literally right over his shoulder. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Jamie pulled out a sword and stabbed him right there with everybody cheering his name on. I think that he's much more dangerous in the sense that he clearly fears nothing in that scene. That's kind of my take on it. I think much more the opposite. Not that he's less fearsome, but he's more dangerous, because you can always trust a dishonest man dishonestly. You know? But the person who's just kind of going to do whatever the hell they want, you have no idea what they're capable of.
I disagree with you, and I think it comes down to how I agree with Tyler. How they wrote him into the story changed. And I think it's they didn't have a plan for how they were going to do him. And I would like to formally replace the idea of him being like a weird Captain Jack Sparrow. I think he's more like William Defoe. He's still trying to play that, that spot, but he's overacting, and he has this huge, like, different things going on. And you know what? That works for certain. What? Oh,
You don't talk shit about William motherfucking Defoe. Sorry, bleep.
Okay.
This is a family channel.
That's my line. Like,
All right.
talking smack about William Defoe.
I'm not talking smack about him. I'm saying that this character shouldn't be playing Willem Dafoe in this movie. Instead, so
He's
they
not up
they
to
bring
the credentials of playing to William Dafoe.
No, they introduced him as, I agree with Tyler, as a brooding, sort of brooding, kind of maniacal person who's willing to throw someone off a bridge, willing to drown himself for the gods,
I
willing
can
to
get
do
behind the
all this
change.
stuff, and has a magical quantity or quality behind him that is ununderstandable. You don't get it. And that's what makes him so powerful. And then he just turns into kind of a jerk. And he's a jerk for jerk's sake. It's he wasn't, even to before he killed what's his name, threw him off the bridge. He wasn't a jerk to him. He was just saying, "Hey, it's your time to die, old man." That was probably scarier than going, "Ha ha, you're old, la 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 la," and throw him off the bridge.
Is that transition in this episode, or is it maybe even somewhat called the last episode where he's
I
like,
think it is, yeah.
like, I don't know what the hell it's called, the weird clawed boarding bridge. Like
Yeah.
he's riding that down like he's like surfing or something. Like it's just a real weird scene.
This
And
this
anyway,
transition for the character basically takes place between the end of season 6 and the start of season 7, there, where he becomes
fair
this
enough.
jerk of a character, like Stephen kind of put it, like this jerk of a character.
Well,
Anyway.
and real quick before Nick goes, I think that this does have to do, like, with what I said. I don't think I think he is a casualty of the writing of this show as it goes forward. I don't think they knew what to do with him. I think he was a fine actor in season 6. I think that if they had continued kind of with that sort of idea, he would have been a fine character going forward, not really weird and, annoying. And they had no idea what to do with him. They had a talent on their hand they didn't know how to work with.
I can get behind the bad writing. I think that there definitely was a change. I agree with all of that. Yeah. I guess I just see him as more of like someone who can't be trusted is really what I take away from it.
Oh yeah, like definitely even between the 2 seasons, he's still somebody you can't be trusted. It's such a shift in the tone of the character from
Mm-hmm.
They
again,
make him
quiet
sort of one note. Like he's not a complex character. He's very, very basic.
I don't know.
Like it does.
I don't know if he
Sorry,
needs
Nick.
to be a complex character. You're fine. I'm just
Well,
reacting
He
to the
need-
comments you're making. I don't disagree with it. It's just a different way of looking at the same coin. I think that
Also,
he
like
doesn't
he
need to be
has
complex.
his niece on a chain, and that just seemed weird to me because his niece wasn't being presented as a gift, but was still in those scenes.
Yeah.
And it really, unless it's just to prove that he is the #1 Greyjoy, like he's taken on all successors.
He could be, but also to go to Nick's point, he was always untrustworthy. The first thing he did when he got back to the towers was throw his brother off the towers.
Sure.
He's always been untrustworthy. It's his personality that has changed, and I don't think, not the untrustworthiness of the personality, but the brooding factor versus the happy factor versus the manic factor versus the mythical factor sort of thing. Like, I don't know exactly how to describe. I'm sure there's a word to describe this that I'm trying to do, but he is still the same type of character, but he has a completely different feel to him.
all right. With that here, I will go ahead and turn it over to Nick to start us off with some questioning. What do you got, sir?
One of the first notes that I had in this scene is the interaction with Varys and Melisandre on the wall. Really, really interesting interaction. I wrote down right off the bat, Varys is smug as hell. Like, he does not like any of the Red Priestesses, any of the Volantis stuff. And you can see he's grinning almost ear to ear in everything he says, and flat out threatens Melisandre, saying it might not be safe if you come back here. And there's just this hard change in tone where she says, "Oh no, I will return because I have to die in this strange country, just like you." And I wrote down shook because like his whole face stops and he's not smiling. He's like, "Hell does that mean?" And she leaves. That's it. She doesn't give any more background. It's just that interaction. So I had 2 questions off that scene. I'll let you get your points here. One, I thought it was really telling that Melisandre listed that her previous interactions with Stannis were mistakes, quote, terrible mistakes. I thought that was a little bit of a growth there. Then also, what do you think is the the takeaway from that scene where he says you have to die in this country. I think that it's a threat almost back at him. It's the takeaway that that she still is foreseeing prophecies is what I kind of took away from it. It was just interesting that she's not like, yeah, this place sucks. I'm going to go somewhere else where Davos won't kill me. It's like flat out, there's more prophecies to be had, or the Lord of Light is telling her stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. The kind of he definitely does get a little shook by her final statement there, but it kind of goes back to I wonder like where did this kind of come from Varys of just like being so arrogant and like proud and boastful or whatever to her because like he was with Tyrion in Marine when they talked to the High Priestess there,
Right.
and it just like he had that line uttered to him. Do you want me to tell you what the words in the flames were said or whatever? And he was really shook then too. So here he is meeting another Red Priestess. Obviously, this one aligned herself originally with Stannis, and we all saw how that turned out. But it seemed kind of weird to him just kind of come out and being so boastful and arrogant to her. And then he obviously got basically put in his place when she dropped the knowledge on him, like, yeah, you're going to die in this country too. So, Steven.
I don't feel exactly like the knowledge of, hey, you're going to die in this country too is too consequential, honestly. I think that his reaction is more like when a 4-year-old walks up to you and the 4-year-old's first words are, you're going to die, and then they run away. Like, oh, fuck, that was weird. The kid's right. I am going to die at some point. All men die. But, I mean, it's weird to be told that just randomly. So, I mean, it was kind of out of the blue is where she told it. I would have been struck too. If if I walked up to you and went, "You're gonna die in the United States," and I just walked away, like that'd be, it's probably right, but you'd still be kind of weirded out, I bet.
Yeah.
Um,
Totally.
But then also kind of going to his, or not to his, to more of the Red Priestesses. Just, I still don't understand her devotion. She she was so set on that Stannis was the right one, that everything was right, all that sort of stuff, and she was so wrong. And she still has this weird devotion that she know, or knowledge idea that she has this weird knowledge going forward. And it's like being a Christian in the 1100s, joining the Crusades, and then finally getting to St. Peter's Gate, and them going, "Hey, by the way, all that raping, murder, and killing you dead in the Crusades, you're not getting in anymore." And you'd be going, "Ha ha ha!" But am I? Yeah, no, you're not. You don't know what you're doing. You obviously don't know the will of your God. So where is this faith coming from her now? Go for it, Amanda.
I honestly think it kind of makes sense to me. Like, I feel like her faith has been really shaken by all of this. Like, obviously, she saw stuff go down. However, like, I think maybe she's having almost like what the audience is having when you, like, oh, maybe we misinterpreted the prophecy. Like, she's clearly still like, this has to be real. Everything she's seen in the fire has come true, just not in the way she's interpreted it, maybe. She noticed that. She saw herself walking on the battlements of Winterfell, but her interpretation of how it happened was completely incorrect. Like, I did find that scene with her and Varys fascinating because you don't see that sign of Varys in, especially in the books. He's described as very slippery voice, very silky smooth, and like he drops that facade a bit with her. Like he's very clear on like, no, I don't trust you. I do think you are kind of right. Like if someone tells you you're gonna die, no matter what, even if you're rock solid in your beliefs, it's gonna kind of be like a little freaky.
All right. Do you have anything else there, Nick? All right. Steven, what do you
All
want to?
right. Yeah, I have a couple here. So the first one, honestly, I will get to the first one actually later, probably after there are two separate incidents that take place, and I want to compare and contrast the two incidents. So I'll let somebody else bring up these two incidents. So the first one I will bring up is Dany, my favorite character, locks Jon away on an island. I mean, she she invites him over there. They go talk. They have a discussion where she knew he wasn't going to bend the knee. He knew he wasn't going to bend the knee. He didn't bend the knee. And then she goes, "All right, so you're not leaving." What? What sort of diplomacy is, if you have someone over at your place for negotiations, that is like sacrosanct. You should not. I don't know. Maybe I'm looking at this through a jaded lens because obviously I like Dany so much. But did that just get anyone else just like, what? Nick?
I didn't see it as a terrible travesty. It's not the best move. It is a strong power move. Um, and again, he's not locked away on the island. He can wander the terraces, like you said. He can go walk around the island all he wants. No, he's totally a prisoner.
He can go
Um,
find a spot to be brooding in.
Right?
Yeah, go find a spot to be brooding.
Napoleon wasn't a prisoner on Elba. It was an honored guest.
Theory is failing, I'd like to point out. Stevens dropped St. Peter's Gate and Napoleonic references, and there hasn't been a single Boo history card up yet.
I wasn't paying attention. You guys started talking about the other conversation. I was like, I have nothing to add to this. I just like sorry.
I don't think it's a terrible travesty, but yeah, it's not a strong diplomacy move to allow him to speak his piece, but also, if he leaves, the story doesn't really progress either. So maybe it's a bit of plot armor. I don't know.
Okay, I didn't plan on covering this early, but that whole effing interaction, where it reminds me of, and especially hit in the Jon and Tyrion conversation, is a bad RPG quest line. You go in and you're in the throne room, and no matter what option on the diplomacy wheel you pick, like, it's not ending, it gets interrupted. And then later on, you walk onto a cliff and you have a conversation with somebody else, and they're like, "Do you know what you need to do? You need to go talk to her. You need to go somewhere else and talk to her and ask about Dragonglass." And then you go talk to her about Dragonglass, and she's like, "Oh, well, now you got to go over here. You need to leave me." And it's just like all it reminded me of. Anyway, Amanda?
I am forced to agree with Steven a little bit here. I was like, I literally wrote down Dany, make some allies, 180 degrees here, because she switched from being like, "Oh, your father did this, your family did this," to being like, when he was like, "Your father did this," and he goes, "Oh," she's like, "Well, I'm asking you for forgiveness, but also I'm gonna hammer you hard on your family every step of the way." She's not even sitting on the Iron Throne. It's pretty ballsy to quibble about titles right here when she's like, "You didn't address me as a queen. You literally just showed up, lady."
I don't know. I feel like Stannis had that same BS in previous seasons about how he was addressed, and same with Renly. Maybe it was Renly about how Catelyn Stark addressed Renly. Like, so it happens, but then again, Renly was holding court, so who knows?
Yeah, and like they were there. It's just the fact that like Dany just showed up and she even said like, "Okay, we're not going to take over King's Landing. I know I had to make friends first." Okay, good job. But I must give a shout out to Davos for my favorite introduction ever. This is Jon Snow. He's king in the north. Beautiful.
Speaking of even this introduction throne room scene here too, I wrote down to just looking at everybody in the room. There's a lot of history between just the people in there and then their families as well. So they touched on the Stark Targaryen history a little bit there. Davos and Tyrion have history from from being on opposite sides of the battle, I should say, on the Blackwater there. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting note to kind of look at too, of just the depth of history between the characters there, and not real history, Gary. TV show Game of Thrones made up history. Go ahead, Nick.
Story.
Actually, with the background there, pretty much everybody who used to be allies are now in opposition, and everybody who used to be in opposition is now allied.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I wrote down several things
Strange.
about this scene, honestly, with Dany, because I was very I thought she came a bit hard out of the gates, especially after the last episode when they
Very.
had agreed they had to do. But she also mentions that the Starks and the Targaryens had centuries of peace and prosperity. I was like, dude, read Fire and Blood. There's your tale of peace and prosperity right there.
And
History is written by the victors.
I wrote down a bunch of stuff too for that scene of just like Dany and her many, many titles, and then like Amanda said, and Davos goes, "This is Jon Snow. Oh, he's King of the North," which was great. And I wanted to ask kind of two questions about that there. One of them I think is more of a clear, straight path question because we've talked about this before. Dany continues to claim that she is the rightful ruler of Westeros. And I think we've all covered this. No, she's not. Her family sat on the throne, but her family was overthrown by Robert's rebellion there. She is not the true ruler of Westeros there. I mean,
Yep.
go
She
many.
doesn't. I will say that she doesn't accept that, and I mean, there's a history throughout obviously throughout history of if there is a rebellion, no one from the overthrown court accepts the rebellion as legitimate, and it's just conceded as the province is in rebellion until it is restored. And that's might be how she's looking at it, but she doesn't seem to really point it out that way. She really seems to point it out as there has been an unabridged, I am still
Right.
the queen. You will respect me as you have always respected my ancestors. And it's like, I go back to what Varys said. Your father was a psychopath and deserved to die. You really think that you deserve the throne now?
I would agree with Steven that like on a just a quick before we recorded this, like kind of skim through the episodes, like she comes off real snarky. Like obviously John is kind of on his back on put to his back foot by being flown over by dragons, and she very much pushes that on him, but she just does not come off like a diplomat and not it's just I think it's just poor acting and poor writing that she just doesn't come off, she just comes off like a snarky child. Anyway, Nick?
Sorry to interrupt you here real quickly, Nick. I wouldn't say it's poor writing or acting there, Gary. It's the fact that it's kind of what do I want to say here? Spoiled child is almost kind of in that ballpark there because she's never had anyone kind of push back against her or anything like that, or anyone of kind of the same stature. Everybody has always been below her, hyping her up, whereas now John is technically the same stature as her. They're both rulers of their own world and stuff like that, and she doesn't understand that just because you want to be called queen or whatever doesn't make you the queen. Sorry, go ahead now, Nick.
Fine. I agree with that. I had the thought when Stephen was talking, where Varys has his riddle to Tyrion, and he says, power resides where men believe it resides. Even Tyrion, or not Tyrion, Tywin says, any man who must say, I am the king is no true king. Right? It's not, I mean, you can say that you have the rightful heir or the right to be on the Iron Throne all you want. It's the other people around you who back your claim. So Daenerys has the ability to say that because she's got all the arms with all her people behind her. But is that how the rest of the Westeros sees it? It's totally up for grabs. Yeah.
And there is a word for that, or a term for that, and I apologize again, Gary. De facto versus de jure. And if it is de jure, that is by law. De facto, it is by fact. And it doesn't matter if you are by law the queen or king of a kingdom. It matters if by fact you are the queen or king of a kingdom. What I was also going to say, which was going to be off of Tyler's point, which now I can't remember. Oh my gosh, what was it?
You went on a rabbit hole about DiGiorno's pizza and I'm lost.
Yes, I did. You can't hear it. Amanda's laughing in the other room. Sorry, but no, it's I also did when you were mentioning like he's walking in, the dragons are flying over. She has the Unsullied marching past. You know what that really reminds me of? What I'm thinking of it. A third world country dictator trying to impress a diplomat coming to see them, flying over the big planes, running next to the big tanks, having the missiles set up next to them. trying to impress them with the might and power that they can. And it comes off, I'm sure, comes off when a diplomat walks past all that. They go, "All right, big man with little shorts," and I'm sure it comes off the same way to John.
Um, so yeah, I completely agree with that too. Like now that I think back a little bit on, like I think even when I was watching, I was like, wow, that's kind of just a show of power here and stuff like that she's trying to present to everything. And I tried to look. I should have maybe rewound it a couple of times, but I didn't bother. Of like trying to see, was Danny on the back of one of those dragons that swooped overhead there to kind of make it an even bigger power play. But
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. But like I couldn't quite tell because it feels like sometimes too the size of the dragons almost changes just a little bit depending on
It does.
what's going on there. If you still had a point on this part, Carrie, I could pass it over to you. Otherwise, I wanted to kind of jump off to something else, slightly still within this conversation stuff.
You were talking about the intimidation factor, and I guess I noticed very much that like all of her men in this scene are Dothraki, and I think it's a definite escalation of the numbered Dothraki in any scene, because I think when they entered, it was unsullied, and now it's just like all Dothraki because the unsullied are somewhere else. So that was what I was noticing. Back to you, Tyler.
Okay. So then, like speaking of the conversation that those two have, and this is clearly answered at the the later part of the episode there of John going about asking for help from Daenerys there. I will say this as a Jon Snow fan, no sarcasm in that line there, unlike Steven has with his favorite character. Um, the way John is asking for help is totally kind of the wrong way to go about it. It feels like because he's coming at it of you have to believe me. I have seen all of this stuff without presenting anything to Danny to kind of make it true or providing facts to make her believe what he's saying. It's just literally, I have a problem. You have to listen to me. You have to come help me somehow. So I wanted to just kind of throw that out there, just kind of see what others said, because it is answered late in the episode that John does say, how am I supposed to do this when he's talking to Tyrion and stuff? So, Steven.
I entirely agree with you, and I don't think that's actually a conversation that, unless you wanted plot to happen, I don't think that's a conversation that necessarily John would have had with Tyrion and if you go back a couple episodes, John has always been good at that interpersonal diplomacy and being able to connect with people and being able to kind of know what to say to get his point across. And in this, he's really struggling. He he comes comes across as a raving madman, and I'm sure, yeah, if I saw hordes of dead zombies and I was trying to convince you four to, pick up your flamethrower and come with me so we can make flaming zombies, yeah, you guys would probably not believe me. But if I was to say maybe something a little different, hey, Tyler, I know you're not going to believe this, so let me help you, or can you at least, lend me Longclaw? Lend me Longclaw, please. I will give it back. I promise I'll give it back. And if I don't, I will pay you $500 for it. Like, there are ways to get around that. I don't need Tyler to actually come charging in with his Longclaw sword. I just let him give me Longclaw, and that's I can promise whatever I want, because when he sees the zombies, eventually, he will be fine with it. He'll go, that's why he needed Longclaw. All right. So I don't get it.
At one point, doesn't the Great Bear send like a dead hand down to King's Landing or something?
He does.
So like
Yeah.
they have made attempts, but obviously like we're multiple seasons later and we just currently whitewashed over it. And I think Tyrion might have, I don't know who was in King's Landing when he sent it, but I thought it would have been Tyrion.
By the time it showed up in
So-
King's Landing, according to the book, I don't remember the show actually mentioning it, but in the book, when it showed up at King's Landing, it had lost all
to your
animation.
point there, Stephen, I think even John, when he's brooding on the cliffs, has that comment where he says, who's gonna believe me? I'm a nobody. How do I get somebody to understand that?
Wait, real quick, Amanda, finish what you were saying.
I don't remember.
By the time it got to
Wasn't
King's
very good.
Landing, it was no longer animated. I think
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
where she was at before
Yeah.
Nick so rudely interrupted.
Technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Anyway, that was my whole point. Was that like Jorah Mormont did attempt to prove this, but obviously it didn't get to the south. Tyler.
it is briefly touched on Tyrion by two in this episode that he remembers something from his time in King's Landing there of some kind of the Night's Watch basically trying to alert everyone like, hey, there's a bigger threat going on up here than what you know about. All right. With that there.
I have
yeah.
2 more points real quick.
Yeah, go for it, Steven.
The first one, and I simply have this titled, Bran is Rude. And it comes down to a conversation between Sansa Stark and Bran. And they're having an okay conversation. It's, weird because Bran decided to be weird now. There's no reason for him to be weird anymore, but they've decided to make Bran a weird character. Fine, whatever. And then he says, "You looked pretty in your wedding dress," or something to that extent. And I just heard that. I'm like, bro, read the room. If you can see everything, maybe go 5 minutes further. What the? Like,
I also saw that, Steven, and I was wondering if maybe the assumption is that after he said that, they panned to the weirwood tree with the assumption that anywhere a weirwood tree is, so in Winterfell, he could see the entire history of Winterfell or something. I don't know. But yes, read the room would be a good answer. Like,
And I want to point out this.
He could have said something else
anything
that would
else.
prove, anything else.
He did lead up of like, I'm sorry for everything that has happened to you, and then he drops you look nice on your wedding night. It's like, whoa, there was the line there that you walked right up to, and then you just rolled yourself right on past. And then I want to point out too the line that he famously says there. He can never be the lord of anything now. Keep that in mind. That might become important later on. Just never know.
I'm sure it won't.
Yeah.
Is this supposed to be like another, as they've condensed a lot of things, supposed to be a turning point for Bran? Between being the three-eyed raven and being the three-eyed raven north of the wall, and that was the last time we saw him, and now he's in Winterfell, and they're trying to like curve his character into this weird effing dude. Just
kind
make
of
him lose all sense of humanity.
Yeah, it kind of started when they finally made their way to the wall for the Night's Watch to bring him through there, where he was now all of a sudden this monotone character there, just talking to everything and that. And yeah, they don't do anything to kind of show that he's losing his humanity as Bran and now becoming this all-knowing, all-seeing, three-eyed raven. He's just now all of a sudden becoming this all-knowing, all-seeing, monotone, weird version in a Bran-looking skin.
Mm-hmm.
Go for it, Nick.
I'm not trying to defend Bran, and I don't know if it's writing, directing, or the actors' choices, but wouldn't knowing everything, or perhaps having access to know everything, change somebody? I don't know if monotone is the right way you take that, but I don't think that I would stay my chipper happy self if I knew all the atrocities that occurred to everybody in the entire history of the world.
Yeah, I think we're kind of talking about the same thing there, Nick, of like, Bran as a person is probably changing because he has all of this information as the three-eyed raven now, but the show doesn't really do anything to kind of show that evolution. It's just they show up at the wall all of a sudden. Like season 6 kind of ended with him still being air quotes human. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Whereas then the first time we see him in season 7, he's now this monotone, almost uncaring individual there, basically.
Sure. Just the progression of it.
Yeah, they're missing the progression part of it there. Go ahead, Steven.
Well, I'd say they're also missing kind of when he stops losing any social graces or the ability to, like I said, read a room. You can see all of history and you can know everyone that died and you can realize, oh, this is a sad thing that everyone died, and you still might not make a joke about your sister being raped. That's just me.
Excellently put, Stephen, though very, very boldly put. Yeah. Honestly, I also wondered if this was just their idea, because like we saw the older three-eyed raven, and while clearly he had a lot of knowledge and he wasn't like the warmest person, he wasn't monotone or dead to the world. Like he had a personality that shone. And so I don't know if they're saying that this is because this has happened to Bran so young, or if it's just not. I would be happier with the progression. To me, it's too sudden.
I guess I could get behind the progression comment. Perhaps the difference with an older three-eyed raven, again, not knowing exactly how old he is. I think Brendan Rivers' character was around during Aegon the fourth, fifth time frame.
I think towards the end of the first
Targaryen.
Blackfire Rebellion, I think, wasn't it?
Something like that. I think that perhaps that's what the rub is trying to understand not the knowing of the world's grievances, but how do you do with that knowledge? Maybe that's like the older three-eyed raven was trying to convey to Bran that the past is written, the ink is already dry. It's not, you can't sit and dwell in the monotone negative side of it. It's like passing on the knowledge, and what he was trying to do with incorporating Bran, and Bran just having gained it recently is still in that understanding stage, is why his monotone is maybe as weird as it is. I don't know.
So you're saying by the end of the series, then we should expect a difference?
I don't know. I'm just trying to understand. Like you said, if there is no progression, we're left to draw our own conclusions. While that sucks for us as consumers of this show, I'm just trying to understand what the intent behind it may have been. I don't know. It feels lackluster to say that there was no intent to everything that we dislike. I feel like at some point there must have been some choices artistically as to why actors in the show's direction did the things it did.
Okay, you guys are talking about progression, and maybe this is a question of how the sausage is made. At what point did they? I think they crammed in a lot of Bran, that actor's scenes, or when he was still young. Is this the season where like there's a several year time gap for the actor when he's filming it? No, this is
No.
when was the jump?
So it's season 5 that there is no Bran at all in the storyline there. Bran returns in season 6, where he's obviously a year older, but then I think he continues to film throughout the last seasons there, basically. So it's just season 5 is just the big gap there where there is no Bran because they've made it to the tree.
Okay.
Go ahead, Nick.
I'll admit I'm grasping at straws. I don't have an answer, which is probably the most annoying thing. Just, it just seems weird that it is weird. The situation and the way it's portrayed is very odd. It would be nice if there is some progression or maybe something to help explain that nuance in the character. Yeah, it's just different. Takeaway. I guess I'm more neutral to it. Opposed.
All right. Steven, do you have some more?
One last point. And I should have brought this up actually a little earlier when we were discussing Euron, because it is about Euron. It is about specifically about the ships that Euron destroys, the Unsullied ships. And it is in reference to, we have watched one massive battle where I think we could assume safely to say at least half the fleet was destroyed. There was now just a second battle where the fleet was destroyed. And I think we discussed at first that, hey, maybe they split their ships. Maybe this was a whatever way, because I was saying, how do they have any ships left? After a second major defeat like this, are we still going to say they somehow have ships and somehow have abilities to ferry around these soldiers wherever they happen to need to be in the Westeros?
Maybe they unlocked
Even they don't
fast
need
travel
that.
and extra people.
Yeah. they've unlocked fast travel, so they don't need ships anymore. Conspiracy theory. This is maybe
Two.
the last time we see a ship in this show.
That's way too big of a
False.
logic jump.
100% false. I know when the second ship or the last ship are seen, and you are wrong, sir. You are wrong.
Oh yeah, that's right. There's some very late conversations about ships, but I think this is the last ship battle. Anyway, that's my
It's not even-
conspiracy theory.
It's not even really a battle though. It's more of just a massacre of one
Yeah.
fleet just going, yeah, goodbye.
Anyway,
Wow, I had a point there too, because yeah, like I'll say I would agree, Stephen. Like we're at the point now where like, okay, Dany has lost a lot of her ship fleet there. How is she going to move off of Dragonstone? Which then I also kind of wrote down here just a kind of random side point of like, how big actually is Dragonstone there? Because, it's always presented as like a smaller island there outside of King's Landing. Looking at the map, it doesn't obviously look that big. But then like you're seeing shots of Tyrion and Jon hanging out over the cliffs. You're like, wow, that goes up quite a long distance here, which, yes, perception might be slightly varied by just looking at it through the eyes of the camera lens that they're showing, but it's like, wow, that coastline stretches out a good ways out there. Yeah. How big is Dragonstone really? Gary?
for the listener, as soon as Tyler said the words "How big is Dragonstone," in the background, I see Nick like bring out his Encyclopedia Britannica of Westeros and start looking, and I was like,
It was
for
perfect. I saw the same thing.
F's sake, Nick, you don't need to look up this answer.
No, I
No
would like
one
to know the square
cares.
mileage. Let's go.
I
I
have
want
a
to know
thing for
Big
square
enough.
maps.
mileage with top elevation.
I have a thing
What their
for maps.
population
Moving
is,
on.
what their primary crop is, what the state flower is.
Because
We
the
can go
show
into-
makes it seem like it's just a castle on a rock, but like it's got a village. It has enough to support them. It is
Yeah.
not. It is a bit skint. Like they are clear on that. Like that Stannis doesn't have a lot of resources. He's only got a handful of minor lords, but those lords have to live on something bigger than an apartment. So like it's clearly at least way more land than I've got. That's for sure.
Well, and assumedly they're also upkeeping an entire Unsullied and Dothraki and whoever
Mhm.
else pledged to their banner's army. Like that is a lot of food. That is a lot of water because you're not going to have, unless they have a magical water source there too. Who knows? But a lot of different things there that you also, by the way, need ships to ferry there. I'm just saying that, and it logistically makes no sense anymore. After this
Conspiracy
battle,
theory number 2.
you've already had 3. This is your third.
Daenerys. Oh, 3. There's number 3. Daenerys unlocked some cheat codes for unlocking the Dothraki army. She has unlimited food and supplies.
Unlimited supplies.
Rosebud, hashtag Rosebud.
It's like the mercenary ability in some games, where suddenly you unlock that and like other forces will come to your command. Maybe she's got that.
Unlimited
Yeah.
ammo, unlimited food, unlimited resources.
Also big
Anyway.
heads. But
DK mode
She's got a
unlocked.
big head, that's for sure.
all right, but that was really my second or my last one was just I don't understand how this war progresses at this point because she has no fleet. She just doesn't.
Nick, what do you got?
There's no map legend in that particular page where it highlights the size of Dragonstone. However, the internet says that it's
Cool.
it says it's 50 square leagues, roughly 450 square miles.
I'm going to find this. I'm going to find this and I'm going to get
I am
exact
disappointed
numbers.
in your encyclopedia. That is a massive
I know.
thing to not give you the square
is.
mileage. It's very disappointing.
It is listed. Tyler, you've read the same tome that I'm trying to purse here. Doesn't it reference that there's like a couple small villages and some sheep on the island? And
Sure.
I remember something specifically about the locals would say that they were like had dragon seed in them because
Yeah.
some of the Dragonstone, some of the Targaryens who were on
Targaryens.
Dragonstone would go sleep with the local ladies and whatnot.
What makes a difference in the Dance of Dragons war?
Right. If it's one town, and you'd sleep with all the attractive ladies, like after a while they would all just be Targaryen blood or half blood or whatever. So to be at least a couple small villages with some sheep or whatever.
They're one of those small towns that say we're all family here.
Oh,
Exactly.
no.
Leave the light on for you.
All right. So we covered Steven's points. Nick, did you have any further points really to talk about, or good to go?
Really didn't take a whole lot of notes. I was just trying to absorb this particular episode, and we talked on a couple of things that I did have some points on. So no, I really didn't have much more.
Okay. Amanda, what do you got for us?
Kind of covered most of it already. I wrote down tons of notes about the beginning, or with Danny's and John's thing. Again, she's not really inspiring. She inspires followers and she makes friends. She does it casually. Doesn't really try diplomacy in the past, except for perhaps with Khal Drogo. She didn't really have a choice there. Doesn't want her father held against her, but she'll hold everyone else's against them. Then Davos for the win, seriously, my favorite person in this episode. You know, the great introduction. He pointed out that people believe in Jon, as they're diminishing everything else about him. He was like, you can't fight this fact right here. But let's switch over to Cersei and Ilaria. Ilaria and her daughter. Utterly horrifying, honestly. Hard to say justice wasn't served. They did the scene really, I feel like they did that scene with like the right enough time to let you realize slowly, the same way Ilaria does, like what's going to happen. What do you guys think?
I think it was yeah, it was a little long, but I felt like it was built out for suspense of like, I'm gonna hurt you. I'm gonna hurt you real bad. And I thought about this, I thought about that, and I thought about murdering you, I thought about murdering your daughter. And then I determined a much better solution, which is to let you watch your daughter bleed out of the eyes and nose very slowly as she chokes to death and dies. Also, I pointed out that now that we don't have your boy Joffrey or the hero of the revolution, Cersei has taken on the mantle of the like effing psychopath, which she didn't have these character traits in earlier seasons. But
Is she becoming your new favorite character?
I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by her.
You're a win of the revolution.
Like, the queen of the revolution. Because she's obviously turned on, like she bones like the next scene after that. Like she is super turned on by the torture. Anyway,
Randy.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. Anyway, Nick, you're the only one who still has a finger up after my previous comments.
Well, the prior, not the latter part. I'm not going to get into Cersei getting turned on by the horrific thing she's doing to others. I agree with Amanda. I think that it is a little justified in what she does. Like the earlier scenes with Ilaria Sand, she was looking to destroy all that Cersei had, saying her little viper taxidermied things about how she's going to murder her whole family and whatnot. It is pretty justified, but at the same time, the horror that happened to Oberyn happened and was done. Like, remember the other part of that horrific sentence he sentences her to is she wants her to be force-fed food if she won't eat, so she can continue to stay alive while she watches her daughter's dead body rot. Like, that's a whole nother level of trauma. I think the initial what happens is justified, but after that, it's just Cersei kind of ratchets it up a level. And I think that she probably has always had those tendencies. Even when she was young, like Oberyn tells the story to Tyrion as a young boy, how she grabbed his penis and like tortured to pinch it off or whatever when he was just a baby in the crib. Like she's always been pretty out there. It's just that now she kind of has free reign to be who she wants to be. And she has the scene where she comes up, answers the door after she's just slept with her brother and is like, I don't care who sees it. We need fresh sheets. Like she's kind of got free reign to be whoever she wants to be in her reign. And I think that that's, a terrifying thing when you realize where you are in the food chain.
Could it be that she lost her last child and she lost the last reason she had to be a lady? Like, obviously it's
be
pointed out
humanity.
Yeah, it's pointed out earlier that she's really not sure about what Joffrey's doing, but she still just has to support him blindly because he's like her child. Anyway, Amanda, sorry.
No, like I think you've got a point. She lost all of her kids. She's no longer controlled by a husband or a father. The only male close family to her is Jamie, who's kind of under her thumb. Like even when he's mad, he still does mostly what she wants.
Yep.
And like she's queen, she's lost all her allies, so she doesn't have to report to any of them. Like she kind of almost is the most free now as she's ever been, even though she's been queen for quite a long time.
Is it? But I mean, like, I guess the point I was trying to get to is she lost any reason not to be a psychopath, whereas Joffrey was a psychopath who everyone around him was like, you're like, this is going to be bad. There's going to be consequences for you being a psychopath. She's lost any semblance of any consequences. She's the queen. Like, this is her right, and F consequences. Steven?
I'll be the odd man out here. I don't think this shows psychopathness. I don't think that brutal murder of your enemies or torture of your enemies is necessarily a sign of insanity. I mean,
Even
it happens all
personal
the time.
torture, like very
Oh, hell yeah.
the shame lady, and I don't know. I guess maybe you're not. I guess in Steven's was not historically off, but I think they're showing more of it.
I think she could be maybe a sociopath. I think she is psychologically traumatized. I think she has a lot of issues going on. I honestly don't think she's insane. There are tons and tons of people out there who, if they could torture each of their enemies, they totally would. And they're not psychopaths by any means, unfortunately or weirdly enough. They're just human conditioned people. And apparently, getting down to it, humans are horrible people.
You're horrible people, Nick.
Oh,
Oh.
I'll see you tortured to death for that, sir. Ooh. See, now you don't know where I'm coming from.
Oh,
Barry,
so-
just throw him something from history that he'll get distracted with, and he'll stop torturing you. It's fine.
Yeah, it's just
So-
like, hey, look over there. Anyway, Nick, sorry.
So when this podcast is played back for posterity, and that sentence is admissible in court as motive,
Oh,
I just
no.
want everyone to know that I had nothing to do with this conversation. I think maybe a little bit that she's off her wheels, but yeah, I don't know if she's full blown crazy. I think that she is definitely less restrained. I raised my finger originally. I forget at what point during the conversation we were talking there, but a little bit of like our thoughts on Dany and her counselors. Like nobody is telling Cersei don't do these things. Like she turns to Qyburn and she's like, "This is gonna absolutely kill her daughter, right?" And Qyburn's like, "Oh yes, most assuredly." You know, like there's nobody who's like maybe not quite as violent or ruthless as you're being. So there's something to be said too about the right counselors in your court, that you can be ruthless and straightforward against your seen enemies, but again, if you don't, like, humanity is the word I keep coming back to. If you don't have some semblance of, at least killing somebody and like, because you're against me, you're dead, versus torture and trauma, that's a whole nother level of the word I come to is sadist.
Is Qyburn her whole small council at this point?
Their
Much.
hand.
Much, yeah, her
I
hand,
think
right?
she pretty much got rid
They
of
ran
the
out
rest
of
the small
actors.
council.
Right.
She
Okay,
blew them all
I
up
wanted
in the
to-
Sept of Baelor.
Yeah, right.
Robert Strong's not saying much.
And so, real quick, I want to not to defend Dany. Don't want to be seen as defending Dany, but to defend Dany a little bit. At least Dany, had her counselors kind of whittled down. She didn't actually choose to get rid of the ones she didn't like. They were just kind of through attrition and death and whatnot. This is what she's stuck with.
Jorah.
Cersei has. Jorah got freaking grayscale.
She sent him away at least several times. Yes, because he did stuff, but she sent him
Yeah,
away.
he tried to assassinate her.
Pour one
But
out for
anyways.
Barristan Selmy taking it in the back alley there with the Unsullied being useless as they are.
Barristan.
Real man. But Cersei has whittled down her own council to only yes people. If you have any mind of your own in Cersei's council, she gets rid of you. And that's not the same in Dany's council. So I think comparing them are apples and oranges. I think they might be in the same position where they don't have good counsel anymore, but for entirely different reasons.
Steven, I know Danny's not mad, otherwise Gary would be choosing her as his favorite character, so...
That's not true.
You got a point.
Is
Conspiracy theory number 4. Danny is not a bad person because I do not think she's an interesting character.
Isn't it
I
that if
mean,
you
it's
think-
hard to ignore that logic, honestly.
So much to
Wasn't it
unpack
that if you
there.
think she's wasn't it that you think if she's not interesting that she'll die soon? Wasn't that what it was?
No, if she's not a good actor.
No, if they're good
That's
actors,
a later
yeah.
point. A good actor
Gotcha.
dies in this episode.
Or
So.
a redemption arc too. If they're on a redemption arc, they're gonna die.
yes.
Yes. Danny is not on a redemption arc. The Jorah with the grayscale, he's on a redemption arc. Watch out.
Did you have anything else, Amanda? There.
Just one throw out there. I don't remember what she said, but I wrote down at one point that Sansa was just being real sarcastic. But then I realized I kind of kept that part of her personality back from the beginning. Like the first couple episodes, she was just this snarky little teenager, and that went away a little bit when she was trying to survive, and now it's come back. And I was like, oh, I kind of like that. That's like actually true to her person.
Yeah,
Hi, Tyler.
she definitely keeps a little bit of that character trait of being snarky with others. I had wrote down here specifically about Sansa. She's still keeping Baelish close there, which I don't know if that's a combination of keep your friends close but your enemies closer there, or if he's slowly worming his way into her kind of orbit there. But the line from Baelish is just like, he says it in such a long, drawn out way of basically fight every battle everywhere, always. And it's just like, well, yeah, you should be thinking of all of your options as they kind of come up or whatever. But he just makes it so, like, seem so important and stuff like that. And it's just like, okay, that's kind of random there, bud. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did have a real long-winded version of that. Like, I think it could have been more concise and better written. But I would argue that I don't think Baelish has anywhere to go. Like, he can't go back into Cersei's camp because Cersei, he's already betrayed Cersei multiple times, known and unknown. He can't go to Dany because Dany's two close allies are the Spider and Tyrion, and neither of them probably trust or respect him. So I just think he's in the last place he's safe. Robin Aaron is the one person who truly thinks of him as like a father figure. And so I think he's just where he's trusted now. Steven?
I want to go back to what Tyler was saying about the long drawn out, and what you were saying as well about the long drawn out speech that he gives about fight every battle everywhere at once in your head and you will never be surprised and all that stuff. And it really sounds like the type of advice that someone who thinks they're really smart would give, and or the stereotypical smart advice like, how do you show that someone's smart? Oh, you show them playing a game of chess on a computer or whatever. Like, that is the stereotypical thing for, and I think that the creators are like, oh, hey, they are so, and I know I played, so everyone's aware, I decided to play a game of chess right before we played here because I'm an idiot. But anyways,
Who thinks he's smart?
who thinks he's smart? I am much stupider than and I sound stupid. I'm even still much stupider than I sound. But anyways, it is unfortunately a kind of a symptom of trying to make, it's like the Dan Brown thing, right? How do you show that Dan Brown is smart? By making him do magical calculations in the air with all these numbers flying around and apples flying into place and etc etc. There's no good way of showing that a character is smart without have you guys never watched a Dan Brown movie?
No.
I mean, would you really call them his movies or the movies made off his books?
The movies made off his books, whatever. Oh, I hate you guys. Robert Langston is a national hero. Anyways,
I like Robert Langston. I'm with you, Steven.
Thank you. He saved the
Steven,
world.
sorry, Tyler and I were like, "What the f is Steven talking about?"
That is
Anyway.
why I went off on that tangent, because they were looking at each other with just incredulous looks.
Gotcha.
The point that I'm
I
trying
like
to
those.
make is that they're trying to make him seem smart, and in doing that, he just seems pompous, and the opposite of he seems like the stereotypical person at work that tells you how smart they are, and it does
guess
not come off well.
I'll agree with Steven is that like that all those statements are very much a belittling factor of how little he thinks of Sansa. That like he didn't already either cognitively or subconsciously is already doing this because she's had some real effed up stuff happen to her.
Yeah.
Anyway, Tyler.
So I forgot to mention fuck Peter Baelish there, since he's now the new target there. But yeah, like this
Family show.
Yeah, we've long since passed that there. But dude, like this, I agree with Steven. This is kind of a similar symptom, even though Baelish has been in the show a lot longer. It's kind of similar to Euron Greyjoy, where the writers have kind of hit this wall with Baelish's character of like, okay, what do we do with him now? Because his final purpose there basically was to bring the Knights of the Vale to the Battle of the Bastards there to, air quotes, save the day there and everything, turn the tide when the battle is lost. And Gary is right. He doesn't really have anywhere else to go now because the Knights of the Vale have aligned themselves with the North, and he himself obviously can't go south. He can't go to Dany or anything like that. So what does he do? He tries to get into with Sansa there basically because he thinks his next final play is with Sansa there to maybe worm his way into that family and acquire more power that way. Nick.
That was always kind of his thought too, because doesn't he have that previous scene where he says that the only thing he ever does is whatever's going to bring him closer to his goal, being on the Iron Throne with Sansa at his side. Yeah, I think that he's definitely got himself worked into a corner. Probably my brain was still thinking some of what Steven said about the chess game. Like at some point, all the pawns are off the board, and there's only so many more enemies. And if there's no other enemies to go for, you have to go for those higher position players. So maybe if all his other little schemes are gone, he's just got overconfidence right now. He's thinking, I'm gonna, show my hand with Sansa. Tell her all my plans and just go from that.
All right. Amanda, I think we were still with you there. Did you have anything
that's all I
further?
got for that. I guess my last thing is I really did enjoy Jorah's little about how he's gotten all better from feeling better from the rest and the climate. So it's nice that cured him. It's really cool when you don't have to do too much. Not a painful, awful looking night getting your skin debrided.
Yeah, definitely did not spend the previous night or whatever being slowly having your skin cut off there and all of that.
Basically, you should have brought the hero of the revolution to do the flaying part.
Oh, that's actually a good point, right? He would have been a great doctor there. Clear grayscale in days. But I did have a question about that scene, and that's how do you not keep him for like observation for maybe like a week or two to see if it comes back?
Steven, pulling from history, they're like, oh, he's out the door, he's good. We don't need any of the quarantine stuff. He's good.
But they obviously know what a quarantine is. They have a quarantine barracks there.
It's fine. Only for this one disease.
Oh my god.
Historically speaking, Steven, disease prevention and treatment was at an all-time high.
Or, as we've kind of discussed here too, the passage of time is unknown in this show here. Has he been there for a day? Has he been there for a few days? Has he been there for a week? Who can say?
Oh, we have a
Gary.
conspiracy
Wasn't
theory
there a
coming.
timeline? There was a very specific timeline he was given because he was anointed knight, and I think it was 1 day.
Ooh, Gary.
Ooh.
I think you're
Boom.
right.
That was
But
the next day. It is very unlikely that there's not a lot of blood on that cell.
Right.
Even like just ripping up all blood, ooze, like
Ooh.
I think the ooze comes through when they cut him. Isn't that it?
Ugh.
Like he wasn't really bleeding much. It's probably if the skin is turning to stone, essentially, it wouldn't be much blood. It would be like hardened scab underneath.
Then they transitioned to the soup when they showed him doing it. Ugh.
Stone hard.
all right. Was that everything then, Amanda?
Yes.
Okay. Gary, back cleanup for us. What do you got?
I don't know if I can keep it clean, but I'll back clean up. Anyway, we talked about this a little bit before the episode started, which was noticing all the sigils in the opening, and I noticed that Davos Seaworth has a ship with an onion on the sail. Samuel Tarly has an archer guy. Varys has a spider. Bronn has a shooting star. We talked about that before the episode. We don't know what the hell Bronn's sigil looks like. And Jorah Mormont is a bear. But Missandei is a butterfly. And in a very, very weird, like, I didn't understand the connection with butterflies, but in the intro, they talk about, oh, well, you're from the Isle of Narth. I hear that it's beautiful and they're butterflies. And I was like, oh, is that why there's butterflies? Anyway, Tyler.
Also, with those butterflies there, they spread a horrible disease to anyone who is not from that island originally that pretty much kills any invaders to that island.
I thought was
What?
a fascinating. Yeah, it was a fascinating tidbit in the book because it's amazing they even caught Missandei. Or
So they had to
Missandei.
go there and they captured her and made her a slave,
Asking
but they
the
didn't get
death
attacked by killer butterflies.
They missed
When you
the
put it
killer
like that.
butterflies.
Yeah, it's not flesh-eating butterflies that are flying around killing people, Gary. It's just they carry a disease that kills people who are not native to that island.
It's like what the conquistadors did, but butterfly version.
Ooh,
Some
history.
of the conquistadors, like some of them survived. So like, same thing here, unfortunately. I thought that was a really creative tidbit of George R. R. Martin's, honestly.
Well, anyway, that the other thing I noticed, like on the kind of the double checking about these sigils, is that Davos Seaworth never actually wears any garb that shows his sigil. Like Jon Snow even has a breastplate that's got the two direwolves facing one another. The same with, Jorah Mormont obviously doesn't wear his own sigil, and Bronn still have no idea what the hell his sigil is. Not important. He's a minor B plotline character.
Watch your mouth, sir.
Also in the early episode, like when Missandei asked them to surrender their weapons, I especially took note that Jon Snow hands over Longclaw. That was unfathomable to him because it's not just a sword, it's like a sword that is made of Valyrian steel, and he was given it as a gift from his the only real mentor father figure he's had since his dad died, and it just gives it up. Like, I was looking at that, I was like, I feel like you'd ask any favors you can that you want Longclaw back. But maybe that's bad diplomacy to be like, hey, you know that sword that you took? That's worth more than all my ships and my men.
Just playing your cards.
I did notice it, and he handed it to a Dothraki, and I was just like, one more scene where I was like, the Dothraki just don't make sense here, but whatever.
We need to remember the Dothraki exist still.
Yes, need to sprinkle them in. And then I guess jumping to the end of the episode with the Tyrells, I was going to ask the question if maybe throughout the episode that Jaime's Lannister's armor has gotten more intricate this season. Like it used to be like I think it's the shoulder plates where you could see a lion sigil, and it was just all gold. And this season it's like a gold with like a black inlay, and it like just looks much more badass. Amanda?
I noticed that too, but like I didn't catch this on previous watch throughs. Like he's no longer wearing the Kingsguard white and gold armor. Like ever
Oh.
since they stripped him of it, he went back to the Lannister
Is
armor.
that the difference? Is that
That's what I'm
his
wondering.
Kingsguard armor had more gold?
Yeah, because he was it was
Gold
like the
cloaks.
white cloak and all that jazz. And now, I
Hmm.
mean, he was mad when they took him off being a Kingsguard, but like he still went along with it.
Is it possibly like his father's armor? I don't remember what sort of armor that Tywin had, but it
Tywin
looked
didn't fight.
like
Tywin didn't fight in the front of battles.
Tywin
But
wore
he had
armor though.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
armor.
had like whenever he
Battle
had
of
like a
Blackwater.
sashy cloak or something, but like I don't know, Gary over
but
here
it looked
listening to me
very
and
much
unconventional.
more like a Tywin Lannister. He's the head of the Lannister house now. His uncle's dead. His dad's dead. Like
Brothers off.
I wonder though, Gary, if it's possibly been the same set of armor, because I know he had this kind of armor on when he was at River Run there, kind of part of that siege there. I wonder if it's more just like a scene like this. We're actually seeing him more up close and in daylight wearing it now, whereas like the siege and stuff like that was all at dusk or at night and stuff like that. So I don't wonder if it's just like and also two possibility like we're in a new season now. Did they up the budget a little bit more for reproducing the armor and stuff like that?
Could be. I feel like in the very first season, I don't remember what his armor looked like, but I feel like there was more gold. Like now we're seeing more red.
yeah, but I just like it was very noticeable that it is a much nicer, more intricate armor that definitely highlights his cheekbones. It makes him look more dashing.
So I just pulled up pictures of him in his Kingsguard armor and him in his Lannister armor. It's definitely different armor. So yeah, when he stops wearing his Kingsguard armor, that is the full gold one, and he immediately transitions to the red breastplate with kind of gold outlayings on it and black lions and stuff like that.
Anyway, I'm just looking at Jaime Lannister Siege of River and see if we can find a picture, but
Right? A pause while everybody Googles pictures.
Yeah, right. Pause while we Google.
it's similar at River Run, but I don't think it's the same armor. It's as Tyler said, a different year, a different budget. Like
Yeah.
it's a similar concept, but much more extravagant. But also, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, you're Jaime Lannister.
Do what you want.
Do what I want.
I guess even in the very first episode, the pictures I'm looking at, he was wearing the gold armor there too, because he was a Kingsguard at the time for Robert Baratheon.
Mm-hmm.
So later on, he would have put the white cloak on because Cersei made him the head of the Kingsguard. I don't know. Interesting. They don't
Above
really make
Barristan
note of that.
Selmy.
Yep.
Well,
Gary
now of
over
course
here
I'm looking it
picking
up, and
all the details.
I can find sweet action figures of Jaime Lannister on eBay
Seeing
for
those too.
$350. It's just like,
Nice.
do I really need this? Also, to everyone who's listening, there was a different conversation outside the podcast where I found that I could get a very expensive action figure of, first it was Joffrey Baratheon, and then it was Ramsay Bolton, and I was just like, I don't really need this, but if I was to have like something on my mantle, like that would be just something weird enough, and my wife would never approve. So
I think after we're done recording all these episodes, I'm gonna get you a banner of the Flayed Man.
it's gonna go up in my office right behind my work computer. That would be the best webcam backdrop ever. Like
That's the power flex. That's the power flex you need.
He'll keep his
Yes.
background blurred except for on occasions when he accidentally does it if he needs to put that
Right.
flex in there.
Get that report to me when?
I feel like it'd be worth rearranging my whole room and my whole setup just so I could have that in the background. Just a fancy tapestry of the flayed man.
I really hope
Yes.
you do it.
Anyway, we're
we've-
going down.
we've put this
just evil.
Well, we've now put this idea out into the world, which means it has to come true. So
Damn right.
Yes. Anyway, also I guess so. We're just talking about Jamie. That jumps into the conversation with Tyrell. What's her name? Lena Tyrell. And that is first of all, did her granddaughter know? And I think in the scene after Joffrey was murdered, it's assumed that she didn't know. And she wasn't involved. But on a rewatch, now that you're at this point, we can talk about it. Like, it's like a weird magician's trick when you rewatch the Joffrey getting poisoned episode that, like, there's no real way that that cup can get back to, like, Joffrey, get filled up with wine, and Marjorie touched it. Like, it was, that's what I always...
So you're disagreeing with your earlier opinion that Marjorie was involved.
Marjorie was involved. She claims involvement, or I should say at this point, conspiracy. She claims that she's the primary antagonist of the murder.
Marjorie or
Olenna. You're thinking of Olenna.
Elena is the
Olenna?
primary antagonist.
Yeah.
But Marjorie, I don't know. Like, it's really vague as to whether or not she's involved, because if you watch the episode, you assume she's involved because she's at the same table as Joffrey. But anyway, just things that are just terrible continuity.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I would say it's more of just not clearly. You don't see the A to B to C of how it was all happened. I mean, we see Olenna playing with Sansa's necklace there, so grabbing the piece off of there. It's just now we're missing the part of how does it get from Olenna's hand into the cup of Joffrey?
Because Joffrey dumps out his entire wine goblet.
Yep. But then
and then
like
Tyrion
we're
walks
missing the
back
part
and grabs the
Yeah.
mug, and then that.
So like, does it get poured in the bigger pitcher there, and somehow, wow, I'm blanking on her name.
Marjorie,
yes.
Sansa?
No, Marjorie. How does Marjorie just not drink from the same goblet as? So
But yeah,
that's
like, I
that's
don't
the
think
part we're
she-
missing here of the whole plot. There is like, how does the poison end up in just Joffrey's container there from Olenna taking it off of Sansa's necklace?
because Elena would never even accidentally poison her granddaughter, so like it doesn't make sense that that's from the pitcher that's in front of the king, unless maybe she was told the queen shouldn't be drunk at these sorts of events or something. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe
That's
she
what I
had
was-
some knowledge of like how Marjorie would be like, I'm not gonna drink after she sees anything turning sour or something. But like, it's a pretty big risk to take. Granted, it also completely clears her of wrongdoing, because no one would assume she'd do that. But that is interesting. I wish that would have been really cool is if they showed it to us in a way that like none of us noticed until Lena.
They'd
Kind
have
of a
to
murder
pot ahead
murder
that far.
mystery re-airing, but then they'd have to get Jack Gleason back, and he completely gave up acting. But it would have
What?
been like
Did he?
the guy who played Joffrey Baratheon like gave up acting altogether. He's like a college professor now or something.
Yeah, he also got a lot of viciousness from people
Black.
assuming he was exactly like his character, which is always something that blows my mind that people actually treat people like that. But
Yeah, guys. So I don't like Danny. Don't be a douchebag to the person who played Danny. Like, don't be that person.
Don't be that guy.
Don't be that
Yeah.
guy.
Billy Clark.
Like, there's a reason we say
Like,
poor
I don't like
acting
one
or
person.
poor writing is like, but ultimately there can be things going on, and that I always point at poor writing because some of these people can be phenomenal in other movies and just be really underwhelming in Game of Thrones. But
I remember
be nice to
hearing
people.
that the guy who played Joffrey, like after the first, like I don't know if it was the first season or the first few episodes came out, but like George R. R. Martin told him, "Congratulations, everybody hates you." Means he was doing his job as an actor, but Like apparently he's like the nicest guy too.
Yeah. But I honestly, like, as you know, fan service, like if you would have went back and reshot that with Joffrey and all that, like, and obviously, like, that would have been a much more powerful scene than just having it. Even if it was just in voiceover, that would have been a much more powerful scene to end the episode with. Tyler?
Or even just like having the forethought at the time there when they were shooting that, shoot how it actually happened there. So again, like you're saying, you save that for later. Having
like that,
Olenna
yeah.
giving like her voiceover of like this is how it all happened there, so we as the audience can see it. Other than now, we're just taking Olenna's word for it. I guess even though we already knew Olenna confessed to doing it to Marjorie there, but it'd be definitely, I think, more impactful if like we as the audience maybe saw that or something like that too.
Because there's always a chance that Jamie chooses to not believe her. That it's like there's always a chance that she's just trying to cause her enemy maximum hurt in this last moment. But like, it would have been really neat to see that. That'd been awesome.
Also, I think it would have blended very well with the cinematography of earlier in the episode where Tyrion is explaining what he assumes the siege of Casterly Rock will look like.
And it actually goes to show it, yeah.
Yeah, right. And then it goes to show like the conspiracy theory of like what she claims it is, and then you could even have the scene going on behind it to be slightly off kilter from how she's explaining it. Like that, anyway. Just a better show, a better story could have been made, but whatever.
A better scene could have been presented.
Yes. Real quick.
Also, sorry.
Nope.
You go.
All right. I was gonna say before we exit this point, this is the dual point that I wanted to bring up, and that is so Jamie poisons Olenna, and Cersei poisons whatever her name is, the Sand Snake. I forget. So both of these the Lannister siblings do the same thing in radically different ways. Cersei does it with the most impact, trying to get as much hurt, as much pain as possible out, not even killing the mother, just making her watch her daughter die in a super painful way. While Jamie, on the other hand, is this going to hurt? No, I made sure of it. She drinks it all up, and assumedly it doesn't hurt. Just when we started this show, they were very close in terms of who their characters were. And I think the gulf in between what Jamie is and what Cersei is now has never been wider. And I think this episode is the perfect showing of compare and contrast. How do they do it, and how far apart are they?
It's pretty good observations there, Stephen. Like, honestly, it's true. They're very different.
We're all very surprised Steven had a good point.
Rude, but pain, but right.
And I was gonna say too, it's even like contrasted further by the fact that Jamie says Cersei really wanted to do worse stuff than this to you. I talked her down to this.
Okay, going backwards, completely random point. I'm Googling the house sigil of the Boltons. Their words are, "Our blades are sharp."
Yep. Oh, I already found the banner. I already found it.
Like $20 on Amazon. I'm trying to figure out if
there's none cheaper than like $60.
Oh,
Gary, if this show's a better place, I will be excited for you.
I mean, I want it to be a real big banner too. Like, how big can I get
stretch it across the wall?
Steven, we need to have like, I don't remember his name, the guy who plays Ramsay Bolton. He needs to sign it too or something.
Yes. I mean, I approve this message. If he ever comes to Nick's Comic-Con thing, I will 100% get the most gaudy, huge thing for him to sign, and it would be the main piece on my mantle. Anyway, I jumped around. That is all I had on Elena Tyrell dying, other than another great actor bites the dust, and I don't think we disagree about a lot of things. She truly brought that role to life.
She was amazing. She
did.
was such an amazing actress. Absolutely fantastic. And
Yes.
I hate to compare and contrast things to Harry Potter because I think it's done too much. But she did for this role what like the person who played McGonagall did for that role, brought it to life, and that's
Maggie Smith? Maggie.
Yep.
Maggie Smith.
K. Smith.
yeah, absolutely
Find it.
fantastic actress.
I also wrote down that Elena like absolutely zero hesitation in drinking that wine as soon as she heard it was no pain. Like I thought I was like was so brave, but actually watching it this time and seeing what Cersei is capable of, like Cersei tells the truth when she tells you what she will do to you. She absolutely means it and she will do that. So now I'm thinking it was pretty smart. As soon as she heard that, especially with the next bombshell she dropped on Jamie, it was probably smart to make sure that they could not cause her any pain after she did that.
I did think it was a little crappy to tug the wine. I killed your son. Like, don't even say it at that point. But I know she's got to hurt him because I mean,
Yeah,
her granddaughter was killed. So I
she
mean, I
was like
understand that, but
apologizing to him, and I'm not making excuses for that, but I did love the memes that came out after this episode originally previewed of "Tell Cersei, I want her to know it was me."
The
Favorite was
Game
the
of
cat one.
the Game of Thrones meme game at towards the end was quite
Yeah.
strong.
It was amazing.
mm-hmm.
Was that everything then for your points, Amanda? Or sorry, no, that was Gary.
Yep,
Gary's
that's
good.
all I got.
Okay. I wanted to point out one thing here of when they were sieging Casterly Rock, the archers there went knock, draw, and loose. So just pointing that out there that might become relevant later on. Don't know. But the last part there was wanted to talk about Dany coming up with the idea, like after she's learned that she's lost yet again another part of her fleet, of Dany wants to basically take the dragons out and hunt down Euron's fleet there and basically take care of them. Is that a good idea? Should she do that? Does she need to do something to kind of somewhat even the odds here? Because now she's lost 2 times here, and she's lost 2 of her big allies there, because Dorne is completely done with now. Highgarden is completely done with. She's not making a strong case to her claim to try and conquer Westeros here. Steven.
2 different points on this. The first point is she just seems to dramatically underestimate every army in the Westeros because this fleet has defeated her fleet twice, not once, twice. Killed off multiple of her allies. And she's just like, oh, I'll just go take care of it with my dragons. No big deal. Like, if it wasn't that big a deal, why didn't you ride out on your dragons when they were ambushing the fleet at Dragonstone? But whatever. The second thing is to what effect and to why? She's lost both of her fleets. Is she looking at building another one? Because that takes time, that takes resources, and I mean, obviously, Game of Thrones plays, as we've said, very, very loose with time, but it will take a substantial amount of time to rebuild any sort of working fleet. So what is she gonna attack Euron's fleet for at this point? What's the point? We already know they can fast travel. She doesn't need a fleet to get anywhere. Why not focus on land armies at this point? It makes no sense.
I guess I was thinking you have to do something. Because, yeah, I mean, if you are getting smoked in other arenas, you have to do something at some point. I don't know what that looks like at this point. We talked strategy a little bit in the last episode. But yeah, I think doing something. I guess I'm with Steven. I don't know what effect it has. You don't need to try and save your fleet. But by taking out their fleet, at least maybe you cripple their mobility a little bit. They need it.
I guess my thoughts when you guys were talking about why doesn't she just cripple the fleet? Like, she talks about trying to use kid gloves on the lords of on the people of Westeros. They don't want an invading army surrounding King's Landing. I feel like the people of Westeros really don't probably give an F about the Greyjoys. Like, if you burn the entire Greyjoy fleet in the water, be like, oh well, they're pirates and they're scoundrels. She's actually making the world a better place. So that's I guess I would think that that's the right move, is to just obliterate the Greyjoys. Nick?
Euron has that comment where, he's like, they're cheering me on. It's so great. And Jaime's like, well, they were calling for Cersei to be killed just a couple, weeks ago. It's like they just want a head on a spike. It doesn't matter whose head. So yeah, I think that the common people don't really have a beholdence to anybody. They just want the bloodshed.
All right. Well, that does it for me and my points. Does anyone have any final?
What's your opinion? No. What's your opinion?
What is my opinion?
Yeah.
So I think ultimately, like, something has to be done with Euron and his fleet there, because obviously they can't get it done. Danny's fleet can't get it done in the water there, so something has to be done here. But it's kind of hard to say, because, like you said, the war is not going to be won in the ocean or on the seas there. It's going to be won with basically overtaking King's Landing or not. So yes, they need to focus more on their ground forces and everything like that. That is the right play. But again, still though, if you're going to be constantly harassed while you're trying to drop your forces off on land from Dragonstone, you are going to have to deal with the fleet at some point in time.
Would it is. I agree that you're gonna have to deal with the fleet at some time. I don't know. You gotta be careful how you do about it, because obviously they've won twice, but at least from her perspective, I would kind of see that, like, to trump this fleet, they've done it twice with a ship and it's not working. They're losing. I could see trying to take this to the next step. Let's see what they think of dragons or something.
And her Danny's side does have a good point of, like, all it takes is one arrow for the war to be over if they take her out, even if she's on top of the dragons and stuff like that. So it's
but I do notice that, like, no one else is saying this to their commanders. Like, is it just because she's the queen here? Like,
yeah.
if there was a guy ruling on the dragon, they would not be telling him that. He's expected to be the commander. I'd be kind of pissed too if I was her. That, like, yes, you're right, but you're not gonna. No one. They keep treating her like she's this gentle queen, and she is proven over and over again she's not. Sorry, Tyler, I interrupted you.
I'm good. Go for it, Steven.
I guess my last just comment here is every battle that what she's also got to understand, what someone's got to counsel her about, every battle she fights that's not a decisive victory in her favor is a one more step for her opponents to get used to dragons, to get used to Unsullied, and to get used to the Dothraki. Every battle that is not a decisive outcome in her favor then is a defeat, because those are her main, weapons. And if she keeps monkeying around with dragons, so everyone gets used to them and aren't really afraid of them, if she keeps monkeying around with the Unsullied and the Dothraki, she's going to come to a point where her dragons are flying over and they will stand pat and they will shoot at it. And I don't know what a bolt does to a dragon. I bet it's not good.
I did want to bring up one point too about, excuse me, the Unsullied there. And maybe this is more of a question, Stephen, for you, for just kind of like combat purposes and stuff like that. But is waving a large spear around in close quarters the smartest idea if you want to take over a castle like that?
No. So it's if you have a long spear like that, generally you have a short sword for up close combat. For exactly what you're saying, if you bring a pike or a long spear or even like a medium spear into a close quarters fight, you're fucked, because you're not gonna be able to wield it. You're not gonna be able to stab anyone. unless you have something short like a kukri or something like that, it's you're gonna be dead. And that's like why in modern, even I take this to modern military combat. The reason why people don't run around with big assault rifles like AK-47s everywhere in modern urban combat is because they're too big and too unwieldy. And that's why you have things like the Uzi and the AK-74SU, small like bullpupped weapons, stuff like that. You have little things that are easily maneuverable like a short sword.
Who's carrying a short
Now
sword around in
this
modern
video
today?
is gonna get flagged for all the talk Steven has about.
Hey, don't deny me
assault
my
rifles.
First Amendment rights.
Maybe Steven should just be flagged.
Second Amendment.
Second Amendment rights, but his
What?
First
Doesn't
Amendment
have
rights.
to-
Is,
It
Steven,
doesn't
how
have
did
to-
you do that?
Yeah,
First Amendment rights to
wow.
talk about it. First
We
very
Amendment rights to
discredit
talk
all
about
of your
it.
history
Oh my
references
God.
this entire episode because
It
you
was
don't
on
know the Bill of
purpose.
Rights.
It was on purpose.
He says that
You're
now.
the Bill of Rights.
None of us
It's his-
believed you were that stupid. Sorry.
It's his
I
first
believe
bill,
I'm that stupid.
his First Amendment to be able to talk about it. So that's what he's referencing.
Oh.
Don't
Don't
you
defend
cover
him.
for him, Nick.
Not giving him
Just
credit.
point it out.
But yeah, like when they're trying to show the Unsullied being this badass tactical force, it's like, why the hell are you guys using spears in close quarters combat
Wow.
here? This is what got you into trouble in Marine there when we lost Barris and Selmy.
Yes.
It's the reference to, are the Unsullied good sailors as well? They're
Yeah.
only trained in that one form of combat. That's all they know. They're going to eventually find a situation, or someone's going to design a better situation where their battle tactics are worthless.
Urban combat is not what you want for a spearman. No, you're exactly right.
All right. So if nobody has any other points beyond that, we are going to wrap this episode up then. So for next time, we will be watching season 7, episode 4, The Spoils of War. I don't know what's going to happen to that one, but it seems like it's going to be interesting here. So that'll do it for us here. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Hope you have a good one.
Have a good day, everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we good to go? Not to interrupt anyone here, but
Oh, Nick, in your book of boners, can you tell me the sigil for Tarly and Braun